Logan lived alone on the edge of Sector 9, far from the big cities. He liked silent stars and soil under his boots. But for the last 3 nights, something had been stealing his crops. Heavy footsteps, broken fence, crushed plant sit. Was not a small animal, so he decided to set a trap, something strong and silent. He worked in the dark, using wires, nets, and old tech from his storage. Logan had caught wild beasts before, and this time he was ready. He placed the trap near the south field, the place where the last attack happened. It was hidden under tall grass, invisible unless you stepped right on it as the night grew cold. Logan sat by the fire inside his small wooden cabin. The wind howled outside, and clouds covered the moon. He checked the scanner on his wall, no movement yet. But he knew something or someone would come. Hours passed, and just when he was about to close his eyes, the alarm beeped. Movement detected in the trap zone. He grabbed his jacket, his boots, and an old pulse rifle, just in case. Logan stepped outside into the darkness, rain starting to fall. His boots sank in the wet soil as he moved through the tall grass. The scanner showed 1 life form, small, not heavy, but still large enough. He reached the trap and stopped, staring in shock. It was not a beast, not even close. In the middle of the net was a small figure. Shaking badly, long arms, thin body, glowing blue skin, and large, fearful eyes. An alien girl. Maybe no older than a teenager in human years. She was caught in the trap ropes around her legs and waist. She looked at Logan like he was death itself. "Hey," Logan whispered, holding up his hands. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl hissed like an animal and tried to crawl back, but the net held her tight. Logan knelt slowly, putting his rifle down on the wet ground. Her eyes followed every movement, wild and full of panic. He noticed bruises on her arms and dried blood near her ankles. She was hurt, cold, and soaked from the rain. Her clothes were torn. Maybe she had been running for days, but from what? "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe now." She didn't understand his words, but she froze when he cut the ropes. The moment she was free, she didn't run. She just collapsed, too weak to move. Logan lifted her carefully in his arms. She was light to light for someone her size. She didn't fight, didn't scream, just closed her eyes and shivered. Her skin felt like ice, and her breath was shallow. He carried her back to the cabin. Opening the door with his elbow, inside, the fire was still burning, warm and glowing. He placed her on the soft couch near the fire, then grabbed a dry blanket and wrapped her tightly. Logan didn't know what to do. She wasn't human, but she looked like a person, someone who had suffered, someone afraid. He heated soup and tried to feed her with a spoon. She turned her head away at first, scared, but after a few minutes, she opened her mouth and took one small bite. "You don't have to be afraid," he said quietly. "I won't hurt you again." She didn't understand the words, but maybe she understood the tone. Her eyes looked up at him, confused and tired. Logan sighed, sitting down beside her with a mug in his hand. He didn't ask for this, didn't expect it. He only wanted to stop animals from eating his crops instead. He caught a lost alien girl who thought he was the enemy, and somehow he didn't want her to leave. Outside, the wind grew stronger and thunder rolled through the sky, but inside, the cabin was warm and quiet. The girl finally closed her eyes and slept. Logan watched her for a while, then stood up and checked the door lock. He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or why she was alone. But something told him this was only the beginning, and whatever trouble she brought with her, it would come soon. The rain fell all night, soft but steady. Tapping gently on the cabin roof, Logan didn't sleep, not fully. He sat in the wooden chair near the fire, one eye on the door, the other on the girl. She lay still on the couch, her small form hidden under thick blankets. Her breathing was soft now, not sharp and scared like before. But her fingers twitched in her sleep, like she was still running in her dreams. In the dim orange light, Logan studied her face. She had 3 faint lines across each cheek, like natural markings. Her ears were pointed and thin, almost folded like wings. Her skin pale blue had a shimmer when the firelight touched it. She looked fragile, like she could break with one wrong step. But something in her eyes, even in fear, had been strong when morning came. Logan made a quiet breakfast: eggs, bread, and water. He placed the tray on a low table beside her. The girl opened her eyes slowly, blinking against the light. For a second, she looked around wildly, as if she forgot where she was. Then her eyes landed on Logan, who stood across the room with hands raised. "It's okay," he said in a calm voice. "You're safe here." She didn't respond, not with words. But she didn't scream or run either. She sat up slowly, pulling the blanket tighter around her body. Her eyes flicked to the food, then back to him. Then to the door. Logan noticed the hunger in her stare. Even if she didn't move, he took a step back, then sat on his chair. He didn't speak, didn't move, just waited, like someone taming a wild bird after a full minute. She reached out with trembling hands. She picked up the bread first, sniffed it, then took a bite. The way she ate was careful, fast, but silent. Like someone who learned to eat without making noise. Logan watched her. Not with pity, but with curiosity and growing concern. Who was she? Where did she come from? And why did she look like she expected every touch to be pain? Later that day, Logan tried to speak with her again. He pointed to himself and said, "Logan." Then he pointed at her, gently asking, "You?" She stared, confused. He tried again, slowly, "I am Logan." He waited, giving her time. Finally, after a long silence, she pressed her hand to her chest. "Double quotes, ... AEL, Ari," she said. Almost a whisper, her voice was soft and broken, like it hadn't been used in weeks, but it was the first word she gave him, and Logan felt something shift inside. He smiled just a little and nodded. "Okay, Ilari," he said, "you're safe." The rest of the day passed quietly. Logan gave her space, but stayed close enough in case she needed help. She didn't try to run, but she always kept her eyes on the windows. Sometimes she would freeze when a bird flew past or the wind blew too hard. That evening, as the sun sank behind the forest hills, a sound came from the sky, a soft humming, mechanical, searching. Logan stepped outside and looked up. A patrol drone, sleek and round, hovered above his field, scanning the ground. He tensed, walking out slowly with his ID chip in hand. The drone stopped in front of him and beeped. "Civilian 449 Logan." The mechanical voice said, "Have you seen any unknown life forms in the past 48 hours? Logan hesitated, just for a second. His eyes glanced at the cabin, then back to the drone. "No," he said firmly. "Just raccoons and wild birds, same as always." The drone scanned his body, scanned the house, but didn't enter. "Thank you," it replied. "Stay alert and report anything unusual." Then it floated away, disappearing into the distance. Logan stood there in the wind for a few moments, heart pounding, when he stepped back inside. Ilari was gone. Panic surged in his chest. Had she escaped? Then he heard a small cough. She was hiding under the floor panel near the storage trapdoor. She had hidden herself without a sound. Logan knelt down and opened the panel slowly. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and full of fear. He didn't speak, only reached down and offered his hand. After a moment, she took it. He helped her out, and she sat back on the couch, still shaking, but this time not from the cold. He placed the blanket over her again and said quietly, "They were not here for you." Not this time, but he was lying, and they both knew it. Someone was searching for her, and Logan had just told his first official lie for a stranger he barely knew. But something about her silence, her eyes, her fear, stayed with him. She wasn't just running, she was hiding from something dangerous. And now, Logan was part of it, whether he wanted to be or not. The next morning, the sky was clear and quiet. The storm had passed, but the air felt heavier somehow. Logan stood outside his cabin, sipping his bitter coffee and watching the sunrise. Behind him, inside the cabin, Ilari was still asleep, curled. Under the blanket like a child, he had barely slept himself. His mind kept repeating the sound of the drone's voice asking about unknown life forms. It hadn't scanned the inside of his home, not yet, but Logan knew things were changing. He had just lied to the patrol network. Something that could get him fined or worse. Ilari didn't speak much, but she didn't need to. Her silence told him everything. She had trusted no one out there. And now she trusted him just a little, enough to eat his food, wear his old clothes, and sit by his fire. It was more than he had expected, but the question burned deeper now. Who was after her? And why would the system send drones to track someone so small and scared? That afternoon, Logan fixed the damaged fence around his crops. Ilari followed him silently, her feet barely making a sound. She stayed close, always watching the skies. She jumped when a bird flew overhead, her hand reaching for a stick like a weapon. Logan handed her a small tool instead, a scanner. It was harmless, but it made her feel useful. Together, they worked in the field. Not as man and alien, but as something closer to a team. When the sun reached the middle of the sky, they heard it, a low hum, strange, deep, and growing louder. Logan turned quickly, scanning the clouds. A ship was coming, not a drone, but a full patrol vessel. It flew slowly over the forest, its scanners glowing red. Logan grabbed Ilari's arm and pulled her behind a stack of firewood. The ship passed. Overhead, sweeping the land with beams of light, Ilari held her breath, her body shaking. Logan covered her with his jacket, shielding her from the light. The ship paused above his land for a long moment, then finally turned and vanished beyond the treetops. Silence returned. But it felt false, like a blanket hiding something sharp. Logan let her back inside, locking the doors tight. "They're looking harder now," he muttered. "This isn't random." Ilari sat near the window, her eyes fixed on the sky. Logan could see it in her face. She had seen this before. He sat down beside her and placed a tablet on the table. Using simple words and drawings, he asked questions. She looked at them. Slowly, one by one. Who chases you? Why did you run? Are they dangerous? Her hand hovered over the screen. Then she typed one word: slavers. Logan's chest tightened. He had heard rumors before, whispers in the spaceports, stories of secret auctions and missing travelers, but he never believed it fully. Now, the truth sat beside him, shivering in his old clothes. Ilari tapped the screen again, typing slowly. "I escaped from transport ship. I ran through forest. I saw light, then your trap." She paused, then added, "I thought you were one of them." Logan sighed, rubbing his hands over his face. "Not me," he said quietly. "I don't sell people." She looked at him then. "Really?" Looked like she was trying to read the truth in his eyes after a long moment. She nodded once. That evening, Logan started reinforcing the cabin. He added stronger locks, blocked the back windows, and moved his tools closer to the main door. Ilari helped, using the hammer. Even though it was too big for her hands, she was silent, but not still. She wanted to help, and Logan respected that. They shared dinner, simple stew and old crackers, for the first time. She didn't flinch when he passed her the bowl. They sat together near the fire, and Logan told her stories, small ones, of Earth, of rivers and snow. She didn't understand every word, but she smiled at the sound of them. Later that night, Logan stepped outside again, checking the sky. That's when he saw it. A red beam shot up from the far mountain's brief. Sharp, like a signal, he narrowed his eyes. That wasn't natural. It was a tracker ping, a beacon used by hunters, slavers, or worse. Someone had marked this area. They were closing in. Logan returned inside and sat near Ilari. She looked up at him, her eyes asking the question. He didn't speak right away, but then he leaned close and whispered, "They're coming, Ilari." Looked down, quiet. Then she whispered back, "I know." The wind was quiet. But Logan's heart was not. He had seen the red tracker light in the sky. Someone was hunting, marking the land. Not just looking randomly, they knew where to come, and they were coming soon. Inside the cabin, Ilari sat on the wooden floor, watching the flame dance in the fireplace. Her knees were pulled to her chest, and her hands trembled slightly. Not from the cold, but from memory. Logan poured hot water into a metal cup and handed it to her. She took it slowly, eyes lowered, like she didn't believe she deserved it. "Ilari," Logan said softly, sitting across from her. "I need to know." He didn't raise his voice, didn't force her, but she looked up anyway. He showed her a sketch on his tablets. Simple. Stick figures of guards, ships, and cages. He pointed at them, and then at her. She stared at the images for a long time. Then, slowly, she began to speak. Her voice was quiet, like it hadn't been used in years. "Taken when small," she said. "From home planet." Logan leaned forward, listening to every word. "Sold. Moved from place to place. Different cages, different buyers." Her hands clenched into fists, not loud to speak. Logan felt his chest tightened. He had feared something like this, but hearing it from her own lips, "Sit," was worse. "Why now?" He asked gently, "Why were you on that transport ship?" She looked at him, eyes filled with a sadness too deep for her young face. "Last buyer wanted. Breeding," she said, almost choking on the word. "Not pain." She added quickly, "They said it would be gentle, but still prison." Logan looked away, jaw clenched. He had heard rumors of colonies where aliens were bred like animals. He had always told himself it wasn't real, but now one of those victims was sitting in front of him. She stared into the fire and whispered, "I ran. When the ship landed, door opened, I ran into trees. Didn't know where, just ran." Her eyes flicked up. Then, "Your trap." Logan leaned back against the wall, running a hand over his face. "I'm sorry," he said, "that you went through all that." She gave a tiny nod, like she didn't expect kindness, but accepted it anyway. They sat in silence after that, the fire crackling between them. Ilari held the cup tighter, like it was something precious. Logan stood and walked to the window. He looked out across the trees, his hand resting on the window frame. Then he turned to her again. "You don't have to run anymore," he said. Her eyes widened. "Here, you're safe," he added, voice steady. She didn't answer, but her eyes glistened with moisture. That night, Logan opened his weapons locker. For the first time in years, he cleaned an old pulse rifle, loaded a shock pistol, and set traps near the outer edge of the field. He wasn't preparing for animals this time. He was preparing for people. Ilari helped where she could, carrying small tools, placing sensors, and checking camera feeds. She didn't say much, but every time she worked beside him, she looked a little stronger. After the preparations, they sat together near the fire again. Logan took out an old music device and played a soft earth melody. Ilari tilted her head. "Curious music," Logan said. "From my world." She nodded slowly, listening with closed eyes. Then she began to hum a low, strange tune that sounded like stars whispering. Logan didn't interrupt. He let her sing. It was the first thing she had done freely. No fear, no silence, just her voice, soft and full of pain. When she stopped, she looked down and whispered, "My people sing to the moon." Logan smiled gently. "And now "You sing here," he said, "with me." For the first time, Ilari smiled, a real smile, not wide, not bold, but enough to light her face with something warm later that night. While Ilari slept curled under the blankets, Logan checked the scanner logs. A small red dot blinked near the edge of the forest. Movement, human size, no ID ping, no authorized access. He stared at the screen, then looked at her sleeping form. The shadows outside grew darker, and the wind whispered through the trees. Whoever was out there, they weren't far, and they weren't. Friendly Logan turned off the light, picked up his weapon, and waited by the door. He had made a promise she wouldn't be taken again, not while he was alive. The night was thick and heavy. Even the wind held its breath. Logan stood near the front door, his rifle resting against the wall. The scanner showed movement outside, steady and deliberate. He didn't wake Ilari. She needed rest more than anything. But he kept the lights off and windows covered. He watched through the small crack between the boards on the window. Then, just before midnight, two shadows stepped into the clearing. Logan's heart beat faster. They weren't animals, and they weren't lost travelers. They moved with purpose. Scanning the ground with strange glowing rods, they were hunters. One was tall and thin, with silver armor that shimmered under the moonlight. The other was shorter but heavier, carrying a weapon that looked far too advanced for legal use. Their eyes glowed faint red in the dark. They stopped near Logan's fence, whispering to each other in a language he didn't recognize. Then, without warning, they turned and walked straight toward his cabin. Logan stepped back from the window and waited near the door. His hand gripped the shock pistol tightly when the knock came. It was soft but sharp, 3 taps. Then silence. He opened the door slowly, just enough to see them clearly. "Can I help you?" he asked, keeping his voice calm. The tall one stepped forward, showing a smooth ID badge. "Sector Patrol," he said, though his accent didn't match any known patrol unit. "We're searching for a missing asset." "Asset," Logan repeated. Raising an eyebrow, "A runaway life form," the man replied. "Female, not dangerous, but very valuable." Logan didn't blink. "Haven't seen anything," he said firmly. The short one stepped closer, sniffing the air. "This place smells used," he said, voice rough and low. "Been living here long, human?" "Long enough to know you're not from Sector Patrol," Logan said coldly. Both men stopped. The air between them tightened like a pulled wire. "We're authorized to search," the tall one said, but he didn't move forward. Logan nodded slowly. "You can come inside," he said, stepping aside, "but you won't leave if you try anything." The short one growled, but the taller man held up a hand. "We'll pass," he said, forcing a smile. "No need for trouble if she's not here." Logan didn't return the smile. "She's not," he lied. Not 2 meters behind him, under a hidden trapdoor, Ilari lay silent and still, barely breathing. The hunters turned and walked back toward the trees, but Logan knew they didn't believe him. They were going to circle back, maybe wait for night to end, or worse, they'd call others. He closed the door and locked it tight. Then he moved to the trapdoor and opened it slowly. Ilari looked up at him, her eyes wide. "They're here," he whispered. "Hunters." She didn't ask which kind, she already knew. Her hands trembled as she climbed out. Logan handed her a small satchel of supplies and nodded. "We have to go," he said. Now, they didn't take much, just weapons, food, and a map. Logan activated the emergency lockdown on the cabin, flooding it with EMP fields. If anyone entered, the power would short out, burning everything inside. They climbed onto his old hoverbike. Ilari sat behind him, arms wrapped tightly around his waist. The forest was dark, full of noise. But Logan drove fast and sure. He knew these paths better than anyone. Behind them, the hunters found the empty Cabin shouted in anger, but it was too late. The chase had begun. They drove through the woods. Past old ruins and quiet lakes, Logan didn't speak. But Alari could feel the tension in his body. He was protecting her with everything he had. After 2 hours of riding, they reached a forgotten bunker buried under a rocky hill. Logan opened the sealed hatch and guided her inside. It was cold and damp, but safe for now. She looked around, her breath visible in the air. This place? She asked softly. Old war shelter, Logan replied. No signals, no tracking. She nodded and sat near the wall, exhausted. Logan sat beside her, watching her face in the faint light. You don't have to run alone anymore, he said quietly. I'm not running, she whispered. I'm hiding. But I don't want to hide forever. He reached over and gently placed a hand on hers. Then we'll fight, he said. Ilari looked at him, eyes full of something new hope. She had expected chains, pain, and fear. But what she found was warmth, a protector, and a man who had nothing to gain yet stayed. Outside, the forest waited in silence. The hunters wouldn't stop, but now neither would Logan. The old bunker was silent. But Logan couldn't sleep. He sat near the entrance, his rifle across his lap. Eyes scanning the shadows, Ilari lay wrapped in blankets beside an old power unit, her breathing soft but shallow. She was tired, cold, and still afraid. But she was no longer alone. Outside, the trees whispered under the moonlight. And somewhere out there, the hunters searched. Logan checked the motion sensors again. The screen blinked red, faint but real. They're tracking, he muttered. They had found the trail, maybe using scent, maybe signals, didn't matter. How they were coming. He stood, walked to Ilari, and crouched beside her. Wake up, he whispered. We have to move again. She opened her eyes slowly, already understanding. She sat up without complaint. Grabbing the small pack of supplies, 10 minutes later, they were on foot. The hoverbike had been left behind. Hidden in the undergrowth. Too noisy now, too risky. Logan led the way through the forest, boots sinking into moss and mud. Ilari followed close. Her steps light but quick. They didn't speak words, would only slow them down. Every snap of a twig, every howl of a distant beast made them pause. Logan's pulse beat like a war drum in his ears. He wasn't just protecting her now, he was with her. Every step forward was shared. After 2 hours of climbing through the thick woods, they reached a narrow canyon. Logan looked down at the deep, rocky path. They had to go through it. It was the only way to reach the safe cliffs near the west ridge. Careful, he said softly. Pointing to the slippery edge, Ilari nodded and started climbing down. Her hands gripped the rocks with ease. Like she'd done it before, Logan followed, covering the trail behind them with leaves and dust. Halfway through the canyon, the sound came fast, loud and angry. A pulse shot blasted the stone wall beside them. Logan pushed Ilari behind a rock as more shots fired. The hunters had found them. Move! Logan shouted, grabbing her hand. They ran down the rocky path, dodging between boulders. One of the hunters appeared at the top of the canyon, rifle glowing. Another shot rang out, burning the dirt near Ilari's feet. Logan turned and fired. Once, hitting the cliff near the hunter's face, dust exploded, and the man ducked back. It gave them a few seconds, just enough. They reached the end of the canyon, where a narrow tunnel led into an old mine. Logan had been there before. Long ago, he remembered the way. He pulled Ilari inside, and they disappeared into the dark inside. The air was dry and thick with old dust. Logan used a red emergency lamp to light the path. The tunnel twisted, splitting into broken corridors and dead ends. But Logan knew which turn to take. He had built a map of this place in his head years ago. They moved quickly, Ilari close behind. Then silence again, no footsteps behind them. No shouts. For now, they were safe. They reached a small chamber. Deep in the mine, Logan collapsed onto a rock, breathing hard. Ilari sat across from him. Her face pale, he handed her water, and she drank slowly. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, but her hands trembled. "They almost got us," she whispered. Logan nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. But they didn't. They rested in the dark for over an hour. The red lamp cast long shadows on the stone. While Ilari spoke suddenly, her voice soft. "You didn't run?" Logan looked at her, confused. "You stayed." She added, "Even when danger came, I said I would protect you." Logan replied. She nodded. Tears touching her lashes. No one ever kept promise before, she whispered. Logan leaned forward, resting his hand on hers. "Well," he said, "they didn't have a reason like I do." She looked at him, truly looked hand. This time, her eyes weren't filled with fear, but with something warmer. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't answer, but his hand remained over hers, steady and strong. They spent the night in the mine, waiting for the sun to rise. Logan had a plan. Once morning came, they'd head to the western ridge, where an old shuttle beacon might still work. Maybe they could call for help or reach a safer zone. But one thing was clear now. The hunters weren't going to stop, and neither was he. Ilari had found someone who didn't treat her like an object. And Logan had found something he didn't know he'd been missing: purpose. Their escape wasn't just about survival now. It was about freedom, together. In the dark, they waited, not afraid, but ready. The first light of dawn crept into the cave, cold and silver. Logan stood near the mine entrance, watching the shadows stretch over the rocks. His rifle was loaded, his eyes sharp, but his mind was calm. Beside him, Ilari tied the straps of her small pack, silent but focused. Neither spoke much. Words felt too heavy now. They had escaped again, but they both knew this would not end until it was ended. "We head to the ridge," Logan said softly. "There's an old signal tower there, if I can power it. Maybe we can call someone who still listens." Ilari nodded, her voice soft but steady. "And if they find us first?" Logan looked at her, his voice strong. "Then we stop running." They moved fast, climbing rocky paths as the sun rose higher. The sky was clear, but Logan felt the pressure building. The hunters were still out there, getting closer with every step. By noon, they reached the broken signal tower. It stood crooked at the cliff's edge, wires dangling like vines, but the core unit inside still blinked weak, but alive. Logan opened the panel, rewired the base, and connected the battery from his scanner. The signal pulsed once, then again. He typed the old code, one used during wartime. A message to any friendly station still listening. Civilian sheltering refugee under threat from slavers. Request emergency pickup. The screen buzzed, then displayed the words. Message sent. Logan exhaled slowly. Now they had to wait. But they didn't wait long. A sound broke. The silence grinding engines, low and steady. Logan turned, rifle raised. Two black ships hovered above the trees, their design sharp and brutal. The hunters had arrived. From the ships, 3 figures descended. 2 were the hunters from before. The third was worse, a tall woman in gold armor, with silver chains hanging. From her belt, her eyes were cold, her face cruel. She stepped forward and pointed at Ilari. "She is mine," the woman said, in a voice like steel. "Return her, and we will spare you." Logan stepped in front of Ilari. "She belongs to no one," he replied, voice calm but full of fire. The woman laughed, a hollow sound. "You think you can stop us?" Logan didn't answer. He raised his rifle. Ilari stepped beside him, pulling a small pulse blade from her belt, something he hadn't seen before. Her hands shook, but her eyes were fierce. "I'm not property," she said, her voice clear. "I won't go back." The hunters moved fast, too fast. Shots fired, dirt exploded, rocks shattered. Logan rolled behind the signal tower, returning fire with sharp, steady aim. One hunter fell. Hit in the shoulder, Ilari ran low and fast. Slicing a wire that snapped and wrapped around the second hunter's leg, he fell hard, roaring in pain. Only the woman in gold remained. She stepped forward slowly, drawing a long electric whip. Ilari stood alone as Logan reloaded. The whip cracked through the air, but Ilari dodged barely. She jumped forward and slashed the woman's wrist. The whip fell, and sparks lit the air. The woman growled, raising a stun gun. But before she could fire, Logan shot her square in the chest. She fell back, armor smoking, eyes wide in disbelief. Silence returned, just wind and breath. Logan dropped his rifle and rushed to Ilari. She was on her knees, breathing hard, but smiling. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded, tears falling. "They said I was born to be owned." She whispered. They were wrong. He knelt beside her, wiping the dirt from her face. "You were born to be free," he said. Just like anyone else. A soft beep came from the tower. The screen flashed, "Rescue craft inbound ETA." For minutes, Ilari looked up, stunned. Someone heard us. Logan smiled. Someone out there still listens. When the rescue ship arrived, it was small but clean. Real medics, real security people who didn't speak in chains. They stepped out, saw the scene, and nodded at Logan. "We've been chasing slaver reports for months." The team leader said, "You gave us proof." Logan looked at Ilari, then back at the team. "She needs a place," he said, "one where she's not hunted." The team leader looked at her and nodded. She get it, as the ship lifted into the sky. Ilari sat beside Logan, looking out the window. Her hand found his, and he held it gently. She had fallen into his trap once, terrified, broken, expecting pain, but instead, she found a man who fought for her, who stood between her and chains. Now, she was leaving not as cargo but as a person, a free one, and Logan. He didn't just save a life, he found something more, a reason to fight, a heart to protect, and a truth worth risking everything for. She belongs to no one, but she chose him, and he chose her back.